I wish the best Rachel Zegler in her singing career, but please stop acting.
Now it looks like the damage control is continuing. It's almost like someone finally gave Rachel Zegler a script to use.
She had a beautiful moment in a reaction, but that's the only good moment she had, in my opinion.
This isn't complete 180 damage control. I don't know what is.
Funny thing is, my favorite scene of hers in this movie, she wasn't talking. Is that ironic?
Has told this woman exactly what to say. The problem is, this is too little too late.
She thought it would be her comeback moment, a grand return to the stage, wrapped in elegance, legacy, and applause. Instead, it exploded into chaos just minutes into the debut of Rachel Zegler's Evita. Audiences weren't cheering, they were walking out.
Ever considered that Jamie Lloyd is doing a bit? What I mean is, Evita started previous tonight, and it seems like Rachel Zegler spends the majority of the show in a black slip and then starts Act 2 singing on the balcony, and the show ends with Diego in black underwear covered in, well, it looks like blue icing, but it's giving Tom Francis at the end of Sunset. I'm seeing it next month, so, not judging it. But I'm starting to be like, do we think Jamie Lloyd is making fun of us? He's sort of like, what if I strip a musical down to its core and then I cast someone famous? Will people still reward it and give me props / pay lots of money to give me? I'm not wrong. I love Sunset. I think Sunset is brilliant.
Some demanded refunds, others called it a scam, and when one of Britain's most respected actors, Sir Ian McKellen, called the whole thing ludicrous, the internet knew this wasn't just a flop, it was a warning, a viral storm that exposed what critics are now calling one of the most out-of-ouch performances ever seen on the West End stage.
This millionaire in her early 20s, she's completely out of control and out of touch with how things actually are. I can't be the only one that thinks it's very odd that she's going to get paid hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, to play make-believe and then also demand for money to come to her years after the fact.
And at the center of it all, a so-called woke musical, a $250 screen broadcast, and a balcony stunt that allegedly had nothing to do with honoring Eva Perón, and everything to do with Rachel Zegler's image. But that was only the beginning.
Rachel Zegler definitely didn't get the most love in movie theaters this year, where Snow White movie cost Disney $250 million, so she decided to pivot her career back to doing theater, but now she's getting hate for that as well. And now Rachel Zegler is living in London doing the play Evita, where she is playing the lead, and there's been a lot of iconic actresses to have that part before, like Elaine Paige and Madonna. The play Evita, probably the most famous song is Don't Cry for Me Argentina, which was performed by Madonna in the 1996 movie that actually got her a Golden Globe win. So now Rachel Zegler's performing, and she is doing an amazing job, but a lot of people don't like how her and the play decided to organize this. But they've organized it so instead of Rachel Zegler singing inside the theater for the people who paid money for the ticket, she actually goes outside and sings on the balcony where people who didn't pay anything, and they've actually gotten crowds of over 600 people. But the problem is the people actually in the theater are really pissed off about it because tickets are going for as high as $500, but they're actually just watching a live stream of Rachel Zegler singing for a bunch of people who didn't pay anything. To be fair, this wasn't entirely Rachel Zegler's decision, but she did support the idea saying it makes the play for everyone. Well, except for actually the people who paid money to see it, which is kind of a problem. But with that, I'm Charles Braun. Please subscribe to learn something.
Before a single note was sung, the controversy had already begun. Patrons who showed up to London's prestigious Palladium Theatre for Evita were greeted not with fanfare, but with a sign, one that warned of loud music, haze, strobe lights, and themes of a political nature. At first glance it seemed like a standard precaution, but for many, especially theater purists, the warning felt like something else entirely, a red flag. Almost immediately, critics and attendees began labeling it the latest in a growing trend of what they called woke theater sensory warnings. political disclaimers, and emotional cautions that critics say turn powerful art into soft, sanitized messaging.
Hard. And it's lonely. It's very lonely. I just know that if that loneliness can exist, so can other things, and I will be okay.
And it wasn't just
random audience members raising eyebrows, sir. Ian McClellan, one of the most respected voices in British theatre, publicly called the warning ludicrous, in his words. Theatre is meant to challenge you. It's supposed to provoke, inspire, even shock. So why the need for a warning sign?
It is to look at other people's acting, particularly in the company of a like-minded friend. If you go and see something at the Playhouse here and then work out afterwards why it was rubbish or why it wasn't. And if you can't afford the theatre, go to the movies. If you can't afford the movies, watch TV together. Why is she so good? How's that achieved? Well, you can freeze frame and talk about it and learn hugely. And equally from a performance you don't think's any good. And if you don't fancy doing that, well, just sit on a bus and look at people. Because I let you into a secret, all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players.
Social media quickly latched on to the moment. Memes spread across X and TikTok. One viral tweet read, "Imagine warning people that Evita, a musical about a controversial political figure, might be political." Another joked theater in 2025, come for the arts day for the disclaimers. But some defended the production.
Someone who works in marketing, there's nothing I love more than like a good gimmick or something that gets you hooked or excited for a Broadway production. And it's exactly what The Walk did for Sunset Boulevard for me, even more so than just the star power that the show had. And obviously the legendary Andrew Lloyd Webber music that was coming along with it. It's exactly what the balcony scene is doing for me for Evita right now, which I mean, if you want to call it Sunset 2.0, good, because I am a Sunset fan. I've seen it 4 times, going on 5. I'd see it many more if I could. And I love Rachel Zegler. I got to see her in Romeo and Juliet earlier this year. And so me and that same friend that I saw Romeo and Juliet with, you know, we were originally going to go to Spain this summer, but guess what? Spain's going to be there forever. But you know what's not going to be there forever? Evita on the West End. That's only there for 12 weeks. So we'll see you in London in August, everyone. Because we booked them tickets, we booked those flights. We're making some plans. We're making a week of it. We're going to have ourselves a time, a little girls' trip. Anyone else doing this? Anyone else going to be out there at the same time? Let me know. Or if you have London Rex, send them our way.
They argued that the warnings were simply part of a new era, one that respects neurodiverse audiences and gives viewers a heads up about intense content still. Others weren't convinced, especially since those very themes of a political nature turned out to be not just intense, but front and center.
Jamie Lloyd just couldn't help himself, could he? He said, "If I am directing a revival of an Andrew Lloyd Webber show, it simply must end with the male lead getting completely naked in his black underwear, covered in goop." He did it in Sunset, and now he's doing it in Evita on the West End. He's also, if you don't know, staging the Act 2 opener on the balcony of the theater outside. Very similar to the Sunset Walk. And I am getting a little bit worried that this is going to feel derivative. I feel like these elements felt really new and revolutionary in Sunset, and I'm a little worried that if he's just repeating the same formula, it's not gonna feel as new and fresh. Now, obviously, it's not a complete one-to-one. We can see in these photos, the set is a giant staircase, which obviously is more set than Sunset had. And Rachel Zegler is seen in a full costume, although she is seen in production photos at other points in the show wearing a black slip. And so I'm very curious to see how it all plays next month when I go see it on the West End. I'm not necessarily opposed to any of this before I see it in context, but I am expressing trepidation.
Critics say the entire show was drenched in heavy-handed messaging, stripped of the glamour and complexity that made Eva iconic in the first place. And this wasn't just about a sign in the lobby. For many, it felt like a preview of what was to come. A performance more focused on ideology than storytelling. more obsessed with modern politics than timeless emotion, and the more people began to realize it, the more frustrated they got. But if the trigger warnings raised eyebrows, what happened during the actual performance would take things to a whole new level.
The woman was too stunned to speak.
Just
as the backlash around the woke warning began to simmer, Evita introduced a twist, one that had never been done before in any major production of the musical. In the middle of the show, Rachel Zegler herself stepped out onto a real balcony high above the crowds gathered outside the theater. Dressed in full costume, she sang, "Don't Cry for Me, Argentina," lived to the street while the paying audience inside the theater watched her performance on a screen. Yes, you heard that right, fans who spent up to £250 0 pence on premium seats at London's iconic Palladium weren't watching Zegler in person during the show's most iconic number. They were watching a live stream. Meanwhile, tourists and casual passers-by on the street below got the real deal for free first. The moment seemed magical, a tribute to the real Eva Perón's historic addresses from the balcony. Social media lit up with clips of Zegler waving down to the crowd, her voice echoing through the street. It looked cinematic, historic, but inside the theater it was a different story. Almost instantly, fans who paid top dollar began posting furious reactions online. One person wrote, "Pay £200 to see a projection, what a joke." Another added, "Why are the people outside getting the star experience while we're stuck watching a screen?" The sentiment spread fast that the balcony moment, while bold in concept, ended up feeling like a bait and slip. Critics pointed out the optics. Why remove the emotional climax of the show from the people who actually paid to be there? Why turn it into a viral street moment instead of a shared theatrical experience? Some believe the move wasn't about art at all, but about Rachel Zegler. That it was engineered to go viral, to flood TikTok with fan-shot angles and paint Zegler as a woman of the people. One comment summed it up best: "This wasn't Evita, this was influencer theater." Still, a few defended the idea, saying it brought Eva's legacy to the public in a bold, literal way, but the damage was done. Fans inside felt cheated, critics outside saw through the spectacle, and as the reviews started to roll in, the backlash only got worse. What came next, though, had nothing to do with staging and everything to do with Rachel herself. To understand the backlash Zegler faced with Evita, you have to look at the storm that's been building around her for years. Rachel Zegler burst onto the scene as Hollywood's next big thing, handpicked by Steven Spielberg to lead his West Side Story remake. At just 17, she was hailed as a prodigy, the kind of fresh, diverse, socially conscious face the industry had been searching for. But the glow didn't last long. After her breakout role, Zegler was cast in the controversial live-action Snow White remake. That's when things took a turn. Instead of celebrating the role, she made headlines by tearing down the original in one now infamous interview. She called the 1937 film weird and dated and said, "Prince Charming was a guy who literally stalks her." Her comments went viral, for all the wrong reasons. Disney fans, feminists, and even neutral audiences accused her of disrespecting legacy while promoting a soulless rebrand. The backlash was so intense, some speculated Disney considered shelving the film entirely, but it didn't end there. Zegler's reputation as a girl boss gone rogue began to snowball, from red carpet quotes herself, the future of feminism, to behind-scenes rumors of diva behavior. The narrative shifted. What started as admiration turned into criticism. Audiences began to see her not as a grounded rising star, but as someone out of touch, a manufactured icon, trying too hard to appear relatable. And so when Evita was announced, many already had their minds made up. They weren't coming to see a reinvention, they were coming to see if the girl who lectured audiences about outdated fairy tales could carry one of theater's most iconic roles. Expectations were high, but patience was low. The moment anything felt off, the knives came out. That's the danger of being a lightning rod. Every word, every choice, every quote gets magnified, and in Rachel's case, her past controversies didn't just follow her into the theater, they filled the seats before she even stepped on stage. For many fans, Evita wasn't just another performance, it was a test, a test. She may have already failed before the curtain even rose, but the real division wasn't just about Rachel's past, it was about what happened once the reviews started pouring in. Once the dust from opening night settled, critics and fans alike were left asking one question: was Evita bold and brilliant, or a total disaster? Because depending on who you asked, Rachel Zegler's performance was either the highlight of the season, or one of the most misguided interpretations of Eva Perón ever staged. Let's start with the praise. There were those who lauded Zegler's vocals as flawless and unshakable, some described her presence as commanding, her confidence palpable, and her emotional range surprisingly deep for defenders. The stripped-down production allowed Zegler's raw talent to shine. They claimed it was a gutsy move, removing the traditional flash and spectacle in favor of minimalism and message. But then came the other side, the much louder, more relentless wave of criticism. Many called the show soulless, accusing it of stripping all the life, romance, and visual majesty out of Evita. One review labeled the set design as a blank box with a balcony, and called Zegler's performance hollow cosplay. Another slammed the entire production as TikTok theater, designed for clips not substance. The biggest complaints didn't just target Rachel, they aimed at director Jaime Lloyd's decision to remove all glamour from the staging. Gone were the lavish costumes, the sweeping set changes, the emotional crescendos. In their place, bare scaffolding, floodlights, and a single balcony. Critics said it robbed the story of its soul, that the emotional core of Eva Perón's journey was drowned in abstraction and performance art. Audience reactions mirrored this divide. Some stood up for standing ovations, others walked out. Many of those who stayed described feeling confused, disconnected, or even misled. One viral comment read, "This wasn't a reinvention, it was a dissection, and it killed the heart of the show." But perhaps the most damaging critique wasn't from any official review, it came from the fans themselves, the same people who once celebrated Zegler's rise. Their voices filled forums and flooded comment sections, accusing the production of being more interested in virtue signaling than storytelling. And yet, for all the outrage, the show trended, the clips went viral, which led many to ask, was this the plan all along? What came next suggests it might have been. While fans argued and critics raged, one thing became clear: Eva was dominating the headlines. Every quote, every clip, every backlash laced review only made the show trend harder. And that's when some started asking the uncomfortable question, was all of this actually the plan? Because from a PR standpoint, the roll out was flawless. The woke warning generated outrage before the curtains even opened. The balcony stunt delivered viral visuals tailor-made for social media, and Rachel Zegler, already infamous for her off-screen controversies, became the face of a show that whether you loved or hated it, everyone was suddenly talking about. Some observers pointed out how perfectly the controversy played into modern engagement strategies. The production wasn't relying on 5-star reviews or glowing playbills. It was relying on virality, on outrage, on people arguing in the comments, stitching clips on TikTok, and reposting photos of Zegler waving from the Palladium balcony like a modern Eva Perón. critics of the production accused director Jaime Lloyd of prioritizing message over meaning, that the minimalism wasn't artistic, it was cost-saving, that the stripped-back visuals weren't profound, they were lazy, and worst of all that the political overtones were a distraction from the fact that the emotional substance had been drained out of the story. But others saw it differently. They argued that Eva had always been political, that retelling the rise of a working-class woman who turned herself into a myth demanded bold choices. They praised Zegler's willingness to take risks, to shed the glamour, and to make people uncomfortable. After all, isn't that what Iperon did? Still, even those sympathetic to the production had to admit it all felt incredibly calculated. The woke warning, the bare bones set the balcony. The casting of Zegler, a figure already at the center of cultural war discourse, nothing felt random, everything felt intentional. And that's where the debate truly ignited. Was this brilliant marketing or performative nonsense, a radical artistic reinvention, or a desperate attempt to cover a weak script with controversy? The truth likely sits somewhere in between, but for some fans, the damage was already done, and when new rumors began to surface about what Zegler was allegedly saying behind the scenes, the drama reached a whole new level just as fans were starting to digest the whirlwind of controversy surrounding the show's execution. A new twist began circulating online, one that suggested the entire balcony performance may not have been as noble or spontaneous as it looked, according to alleged crew whispers and anonymous theater gossip accounts. The now iconic balcony moment wasn't a creative decision from the director, it was pushed by Rachel Zegler herself. The reason? Image repair. Insiders claim Zegler was furious after early walkouts and hostile fan reactions, rather than issue a public statement or shift the production's tone. She reportedly insisted on doing something big, something that would go viral, soften public perception, and show her as someone for the people. And so the idea was born. She would step onto the balcony, live in costume, waving to the public, just like Eva Peron had done decades ago, a clever echo of history but with cameras rolling. But here's where it gets darker. One anonymous backstage source, whose claims remain unverified, alleges that Zegler didn't refer to the people below as adoring fans or fellow citizens. She called them, quote, the losers, as in, let's do it on the balcony for the losers outside, at least they'll get to see me for a little while. The quote quickly made the rounds on Reddit and TikTok, with duets reacting in disbelief and anger. Zegler's defenders called it fake, a smear, but others weren't so sure. They pointed to her past interviews, her tone-deaf comments during the Snow White press tour, and her sometimes cold demeanor toward criticism. Whether or not the quote was real almost didn't matter anymore. The idea felt believable, and that alone was enough to fuel outrage. Some even began to speculate that the entire show had become a calculated machine, a Trojan horse wrapped in political messaging, hiding a desperate PR campaign to redeem Zegler's public image. The warning signs, the balcony wave, the heavy-handed symbolism. Was this still theater, or was it performance in service of brand repair? Whatever the truth was behind the scenes, one thing was undeniable: the crowd wasn't buying the illusion, and the backlash brewing against so-called woke theater was now locked onto its newest symbol, and Zegler. She was right in the middle of it. What started as criticism of one performance quickly snowballed into something much bigger. Suddenly, it wasn't just about Evita, it wasn't even just about Rachel Zegler. The show had become the lightning rod for a growing cultural backlash, a backlash aimed squarely at what many now call woke theater. Across forums, comment sections, and late-night reaction videos, frustrated fans began voicing a shared sentiment that modern theater was losing its soul, that powerful stories were being gutted in favor of political messaging. abstract symbolism and heavy-handed virtue signaling, and too many. Evita was the perfect example. A story once filled with grandeur, romance, and tragic ambition, was now being performed inside a gray box with a warning sign: the theater should be dangerous. Crowd, traditionalists, artists, even casual fans began rallying behind quotes like McKellen's. They mocked the sensory warning, they slammed the bare-bones set, and they ridiculed the balcony moment as influx fluff, a moment not designed to move hearts, but to earn views. The debate wasn't subtle, it was loud, aggressive, and personal. TikTok creators posted side-by-side comparisons of past Evita productions versus Zegler's version, pointing out how stripped it had become. On Reddit, entire threads dissected the political choices baked into the show, and on X, hashtags like woke Evita and refund Zegler started trending in bursts. But this backlash didn't exist in a vacuum, it was tied to a broader fatigue many feel with modern entertainment films, shows, even books being reimagined not to deepen meaning but to push messages. Some call it progress, others call it pandering, and Evita found itself dropped into the center of that war. Zegler, whether she wanted to or not, had become the face of that conversation. To one side, she was a brave progressive performer willing to challenge the norms of outdated theater. To the other, she was the perfect example of what happens when legacy, depth, and storytelling are sacrificed for shallow buzz. Either way, one thing was clear: the crowd wasn't quiet, and the theater world had just been reminded that audiences, especially the ones paying £250 0p the ticket, are paying attention closely. And what this means for Zegler's future is where things get truly unpredictable. In the wake of Evita's opening, Rachel Zegler finds herself at a crossroads, one that could define the rest of her career. For some, this backlash will pass another news cycle, another controversy, and the noise fades. But for others, the damage might be more permanent, because Evita wasn't just a play, it was a spotlight, and it revealed everything the public had been waiting to judge. Zegler was supposed to be untouchable, a Spielberg discovery, a Disney princess, a symbol of modern talent fused with Gen Z sensibilities. But after West Side Story underperformed, after Snow White became a culture war punching bag, and now with Evita stirring division in the heart of theater culture, that image is cracking. Roosters may see her as too risky, fans are already divided, and even those who support her artistry admit her public presence often overshadows the performance. She's not just an actress anymore. She's a symbol, and not always the one she wants to be. But here's the twist: controversy doesn't always destroy careers. Sometimes it builds them. Sometimes the backlash becomes the brand. Some believe Zegler might lean into the chaos, double down, and embrace her role as the face of this cultural battleground. After all, whether audiences are cheering or booing, they're still watching, and maybe that's the point, because, in today's entertainment world, outrage and applause often sound the same when filtered through an algorithm, and Zegler, knowingly or not, just positioned herself right at the intersection of art, identity, and viral spectacle. So, what happens now? Will Eva redeem itself through sold-out shows and late-stage critical reappraisal, or will it become a cautionary tale for every celebrity who flies too close to the culture war? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain: Rachel Zegler isn't fading quietly. And if you want to stay updated on everything unfolding in this wild drama, from West End meltdowns to Hollywood backlashes, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next act might be even messier.